Let's set the scene. Imagine it's October 11th, 2025, and the crypto market is in an absolute freefall. A really catastrophic crash is happening. But this wasn't just some random market dip. No, this was a perfect storm of failures, all connected. And in this explainer, we are going to dissect exactly how it all went down, piece by painful piece. First, you have to get your head around the sheer scale of this thing. In just a matter of hours, over $12 billion in leveraged long positions. I mean, these are basically bets that the market would go up, all made with borrowed money. They were completely wiped out. $12 billion. Just poof, vanished into thin air.
And look, this wasn't just giant hedge funds taking a beating. Oh, no. The accounts of 1.5 million individual traders were liquidated. That means their positions were just automatically closed out, their collateral seized. For so many people, their entire crypto portfolio was just gone in an instant.
So what on earth could have kicked all this off? Well, the initial spark, the thing that lit the fuse, actually came from the world of geopolitics. It was a shockwave that rattled every market, but it sent crypto down a particularly nasty, destructive path. And here it is, the trigger, an announcement of new, really heavy tariffs on Chinese tech. Now, news like this always creates uncertainty. And if there's one thing markets hate, it's uncertainty. The reaction was immediate and it was global.
But this is where it gets really wild. Just look at the difference in how the markets reacted. The US stock market, yeah, it was shaken, but it only dropped about 1 to 2%. The altcoin market, a total and complete bloodbath. We're talking a 70 to 80% collapse.
And that right there, that's the central question of this whole thing. Why the huge discrepancy? How does a geopolitical tremor cause a literal tidal wave in crypto? To get that, we have to look under the hood, deep into the market's internal plumbing.
Okay, so our first stop is the systemic flaw that was kind of hiding in plain sight. We're calling it the vicious lending loop. And this right here is where all that extreme leverage that fueled the crash was being cooked up.
So what even is circular lending? Well, to put it simply, it's a trick to use the same money over and over again to take out bigger and bigger loans. In a market that is obsessed with maxi everything, this became the go-to play to juice your returns. But as we're about to see, it is so incredibly dangerous.
So here's how this loop actually worked. A trader would take a stablecoin, let's say USDE, and pledge it as collateral to borrow other stablecoins. Then, they'd immediately swap those newly borrowed coins right back into, you guessed it, more USDE. And what do they do with that new USDE? They re-pledge it to borrow even more. You see how the loop just feeds itself?
Just by running the cycle 4 or 5 times, traders could make their initial stack of capital almost 4 times bigger. It created this whole system that was just overflowing with borrowed money, where pretty much everyone was massively over-leveraged and just incredibly fragile.
And this is where the whole house of cards just came tumbling down. The initial panic from the tariff news caused these core collateral assets to start losing value. USDE, a stablecoin that's supposed to be worth $1, plunged to 65 cents. This deep pegging set off automatic liquidations in all those lending loops, which pushed prices down even further, which of course triggered more liquidations. A terrifying cascade. But believe it or not, that was only half of the story. At the exact same time this was all going down, another critical piece of the market's machinery was breaking. This is the story of what happens when the pros, the people who provide liquidity, all run for the exits at the same time. Okay, so market makers. These are the firms that make sure you can always find a buyer or a seller for an asset. When the panic hit, they yanked their money out of the smaller, riskier altcoins to go protect their big positions in stuff like Bitcoin. Well, this left all those smaller tokens with basically no buyers, and their prices just evaporated. So now we've got 2 massive problems happening at once. You've got the lending loops imploding, and you've got the market makers disappearing. The key question is, were these 2 things connected? What was the fatal link that tied these 2 disasters together? And here it is, the fatal link. It turns out many of the market makers, the supposed smart money in the room, they were using the exact same unstable USDE from the lending loops as collateral for their own gigantic positions. So when USD broke its peg and crashed, the value of all the market makers' collateral was suddenly cut by almost half. Think about that.
This instantly doubled their real leverage. So even positions that they thought were totally safe were suddenly underwater and forced into liquidation, which just dumped even more fuel onto the fire.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together now. This wasn't just a market crash, it was a total structural failure. It pulled back the curtain on a system that, underneath all the hype, was built on an interconnected foundation of just extreme risk.
You know, there's a quote from the analysis of this that just hits the nail on the head. It says, "This was a classic case of an external macro event, the tariffs, compounding the technical fragility that was already baked into the crypto market. One thing knocked over the first domino, and the system's own structure made sure every single other one would fall."
Ultimately, this whole disaster was like a brutal stress test, and it exposed three huge weaknesses. First, the absolutely insane levels of overleverage created by all that circular lending. Second, the fact that liquidity was all concentrated in a few assets and could just vanish from others in a heartbeat. And third, a fragile collateral system where the failure of just one asset could bring the whole market down with it.
And that leaves us with one final big question. Risk and leverage, they're kind of part of crypto's DNA. They are going to come back into the system. The real question is, have the lessons from this crash actually been learned? Or is the market just doomed to repeat this painful cycle all over again?